Hey guys, it's JP Gloria, and today we're going to look at the greatest middle distance runner ever, Hicham El Guerrouj. Actually, just one of the greatest runners in general. He set the world record for the 1500 meter, 1 mile, and 2000 meter race, and these records have not been broken in almost 20 years. I made a previous video just looking at his running form as he broke the mile world record, but this time we are going to look at it in a little more detail. This footage is a little bit old, so I'm pretty limited in the angles and views I can utilize, but I think we can still get some key components of his form and hopefully utilize this information to improve the way we run as well. First, let's see how the foot lands. At first, it may seem like he's going to land right around the heels, but looking at the moment of contact, he actually tends to land right on the midfoot. In this scenario, this type of landing helps with shock absorption as there is a larger surface area during contact when landing with the midfoot compared to the forefoot. So comparing these types of landing, theoretically the rate of steps may be slightly diminished with midfoot landing as the foot has to roll over even more as it goes from contact on the ground to swinging forward. However, El Guerrouj is not really impacted by this. One of the reasons are because of the natural properties of the foot. Now, there are 26 bones in the foot, and this allows for the foot to be flexible and adapt to foot rollover. You can see this to be the case as during this clip, he still maintains a high cadence of around 200 steps per minute. What matters even more for smooth quick turnover for improved cadence is where the foot lands in relation to the body's center of mass. This is more important because due to the flexibility of the foot, it will usually be able to compensate for different types of foot landing. However, if the foot lands too far forward, otherwise known as overstriding, it actually causes locking up at the ankle joint, causing a braking mechanism to occur which leads to wasted energy and slower times. Now, let's take a look at how Hicham's foot lands in relation to the body. As you can see, his foot lands right in front of the hips. As I mentioned before, landing under the center of mass is key, but where exactly is the body's center of mass? Usually, when standing upright, the center of mass is actually more toward the rear part of the hips. Based on that, some people may think he is overstriding based on this frame, but this may not be the case. This is because our center of mass can change based on what we are doing. Due to moving at a very fast pace as well as his forward lean, this actually causes his body center of mass to shift forward. Because of this, he may actually be landing right under his own center of mass, which is optimal stride length for smooth, quick turnover. Now let's take a look at the knees. As we have seen with other runners, most have a slight bend of the knees, which aid in shock absorption. However, El Guerrouj has an increased knee bend compared to the other runners we've looked at. One of the reasons why may simply because of how long his legs are in relation to his body. If the knee was straighter during contact with the ground, it actually may cause him to overstride instead. Now, how does this affect his running? Well, with increased knee bend, especially during weight acceptance, more quadricep strength is needed to prevent collapse of the knee. However, as the foot prepares for push-off, it actually allows for increased ankle bending. Now, increased ankle bending during this moment allows him to utilize the spring-like mechanism of his calves for increased power as he pushes off. Ability to do so requires good ankle mobility, which many people lack nowadays. Speaking of joint mobility, moving up to the hips, he also presents with good mobility here as well. Now, the motion going on here is not specifically unique to him as most elite runners do this as well. But what I'm about to mention has not been something some people may pay attention to. Many people focus on driving the hips forward, but don't focus on hip movement as the hips extend or move backwards. As you can see, as his back leg prepares for push-off, you can see how extended his hips are. This allows for increased engagement of the hip muscles, which is one of the main power generators during running. This also causes increased tension to occur at the hip flexors, which acts like an elastic band as it helps swing the leg forward as soon as the foot leaves the ground. As I mentioned before, you need good hip mobility to fully utilize this. This is something many people lack, especially due to lack of movement from sitting for extended hours due to work or whatever it is. This causes the hip flexors to get tight and can prevent people from fully extending their hips for that increased power generation. Now let's move up to the trunk. One of the most noticeable things about his trunk in this view is his forward lean of the body. The elite runners I've mentioned before, like Eliud Kipchoge, have this lean. If you calculate the angle of his body from his foot in this viewpoint, he presents with a lean of 21 degrees, which is more than most of the other elite runners I've analyzed before. This lean forward allows for improved forward momentum as well as increased utilization of the hip muscles and ligaments, which improves foot turnover and power generation from the legs. For a more in-depth explanation on this and tips to incorporate it into your running, check out the running analysis I made for Eliud Kipchoge. Now let's move on to a front view of El Guerrouj running. This allows us to look at the arm movement more clearly as well as his upper body as it shifts side to side. First, let's take a quick look at his arms. His arm swing is more characteristic of many of the long distance runners we've already analyzed. He keeps his arms high and close, and most of the movement in the arms is happening at the shoulders, with relatively less happening at the elbows. El Guerrouj is the first middle distance runner I've analyzed here, so I can't compare his arm movement to the other middle distance runners yet. But compared to the long distance runners I've already analyzed though, he does present with more shoulder movement. One of the reasons why may be due to that with increased speed usually comes increased force generation from the legs. The increased rotation of the arms may be due to a result of the increased rotational force coming from the legs. If the rotational force from the legs is not counteracted properly, the body kind of goes out of whack and decreases force generation toward the desired direction. Now looking here at the upper body, in this view we can see rhythmic movement of the trunk. We can also see that he does present with some asymmetry. He presents with more trunk rotation to the left as well as a lean toward the left side, but some of this may be due to the nature of the track as he is running counterclockwise. Anyway, the trunk movement you see is more rotation than forward and backward movement. I mentioned before that you want to stabilize the trunk, but you don't want it too stiff. This rotational movement allows for tension in the core to help stabilize the pelvis against the rotational forces acting upon it from the leg movement. This is similar to what I mentioned about the arms. Finally, moving up to the head, you can see that he keeps it in more of a 90-degree angle in relation to his neck. His head doesn't really move forward and back, but rather mostly side to side. Again, similar to the movement from the trunk, balance between being relaxed and stiff is key here. You don't want it too relaxed where his head is swinging all over the place, but you don't want it too stiff because if you put too much tension in the neck, you are most likely stiffening up at the shoulders as well, which would restrict natural movement of the body. And that's it for the quick running analysis on Hicham El Guerrouj as he ran the fastest mile ever. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you are subscribed, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support you have given me. If you aren't subscribed yet and want to see future videos, I would absolutely love it if you click the subscribe button and hit that bell. Also, feel free to comment on what runner I should analyze next. And as always, thank you for watching.